William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury is an orchestra of broken clocks. Its music proceeds not by linear rhythm, but by the overlapping cadences of consciousness, each voice speaking in its own key, yet bound in dissonant harmony. If Dostoevsky offered the world a novel of simultaneous souls, Faulkner transposes that multiplicity inward, transforming perception itself into polyphony. The Compson family is less a genealogy than a cluster of interior monologues, voices isolated by time yet resonant through memory. In their confusion, anguish, and silence, Faulkner demonstrates that even madness is dialogic. The novel unfolds in 4 movements, whose relation imitates fugue rather than plot. Benjy's section, without grammar or chronology, is the primal drone, the pre-linguistic utterance of being. Quentin's is the fevered psalm of thought as it consumes itself. Jason's passage inverts both, articulating a cruel over rational monologue, the parody of meaning. The final third-person section, the Easter morning scene through Dilys' endurance, restores, if not order, then a moral counter-voice. Through these contrasts, Faulkner constructs the most radical embodiment of the dialogic novel in 20th century America, a work whose protagonists are grammatical persons rather than social types, and whose time is formed by the collisions of their verbal tenses. Bakhtin teaches that every consciousness exists on the border of another. Faulkner dramatizes this border in language itself. Benjy's cries are misunderstood by all, yet they address the world with desperate fidelity. His perception moves by contiguity, each sensory spark calling forth another memory without hierarchy. What critics call disorder is in fact a perfect chronotope of simultaneity, the coexistence of all times in one unmediated awareness. Benjy's voice has no past tense because he cannot finalize experience, he inhabits unfinalizability itself. In him Faulkner manifests the infantile and the metaphysical together, the condition before syntax where the self is pure dialogic openness. The world speaks through smells, colors, and sounds, and he answers in moans. The reader must translate his utterance, thereby entering ethical dialogue with language bereft of logos. Quentin, by contrast, embodies the tragic intellect that drowns in its own logic. Where Benjy's temporality is pure present, Quentin's is obsession with the past. His interior monologue, fractured by ellipses and temporal shifts, enacts the impossibility of monologic selfhood. Each recollection contradicts the previous, each sentence begins by denying its antecedent. His dialogue is with time itself, a duel rather than a conversation. The ticking watch given by his father becomes mechanical voice against which he argues, but cannot silence. Bakhtin's chronotope of crisis intensifies here, time turns from sequence into trap. Quentin's suicide, far from closure, is a punctuation mark without final word. Death in Faulkner is never terminal but re-echoed across the novel's other voices. The drowned consciousness continues to resonate in the subsequent narratives, proving that voices in art cannot perish, they migrate. Jason's monologue, written in mean precision, parodying account book idiom, represents the grotesque carnival of modern capitalism. Where Benjy lacks money's concept, and Quentin idealizes honor beyond price, Jason reduces all meaning to cash value. His sarcasms, grammatical correctness, and commercial slang constitute language evacuated of dialogism, pure instrument of control. Yet precisely through exaggeration it turns comic. Jason is a character in an inverted carnival, he believes himself the master, yet his every speech exposes enslavement to resentment. When he berates his niece Caddy's daughter, his vitriol echoes the town gossip, the voice of southern smallness. Faulkner allows this pettiness to speak fully, without authorial rebuke. The reader's laughter, bitter and moral, is the carnival's revenge. In Bakhtin's sense, carnival liberates by degradation, sacred forms become bodily, laughter dissolves hierarchy. Jason's speech exhibits this principle negatively, it turns degradation into permanent condition rather than renewal. In him, heteroglossia stagnates into noise. The fourth section, shifting to a neutral narrator, modifies tone but not principle. Dilys' endurance supplies the novel's final word, which is no word at all but faith. Her utterances, rooted in oral rhythm and spiritual phrase, replenish the dialogic field emptied by the white family's collapse. They endured, says Faulkner, an echo of the gospel, but also of Bachtin's trust in the unfinalized word. Time itself endures. Through Easter morning's ritual, the novel attains both parody and resurrection, sacred ceremony replayed within the profane chronotope of decay. Laughter and prayer, despair and hope, blend into the same chorus. Faulkner's narrative method enacts heteroglossia on every level. Dialects, black southern speech, aristocratic drawl, collegiate precision, idioms of trade, interpenetrate within a shared geography. No voice is privileged by style, even the omniscient controller of Section 4 respects the integrity of dialect. In doing so, Faulkner nationalizes the Dostoevskian principle, he grants the American South to polyphony. The civilizational collapse of the Compsons mirrors linguistic democratization. The patrician idiom of honor disintegrates, replaced by multiple vernaculars previously excluded from literature. The result is not chaos but dialogic realism, a world where distinct speeches cannot be mastered by any central consciousness. Time in the sound and the fury is material. Each voice experiences it differently, for Benjy, simultaneity, for Quentin, memory's labyrinth, for Jason, repetition, for Diley, continuity. The novel's title, borrowed from Macbeth's nihilism, sound and fury, signifying nothing, is itself re-accented by heteroglossia. In Faulkner's revoicing, the nothing becomes pregnant with voices, madness transforms into music. The chronotope functions here as temporal carnival, sequence dissolves so that meanings may coexist. By denying linear narration, Faulkner approximates Bachtin's ideal form of open time, where every act still awaits response. Consider the first page of Benjy's section, the childlike perception of a game on the green, suddenly translated into the memory of Caddy's muddy drawers. This image, scandalous to the Compson's code, epitomizes carnival inversion. Purity meets dirt, decorum confronted by body. The reader, forced to reconstruct chronology, participates in this ritual of disorder. Meanings are generated collectively, by author, character, and interpreter, exactly as Bachtin conceived the novelistic act. Faulkner thus transforms reading into dialogic event rather than reception of message. Quentin's narrative pushes this event toward metaphysics. His ruminations on incest, time, and sin reveal language combating silence. The very structure, prose mimicking mental breakdown, illustrates Bachtin's idea that consciousness itself is never unified. Each sentence interrupts itself with contradiction, each recollection becomes argument. As in Dostoevsky's Heroes, we perceive the soul debating within its own grammar. Quentin cannot speak to others, he speaks to verbs, to prepositions, to ghosts. His confession precedes crime, his reasoning anticipates death, making of discourse a temporal knot. The irony lies in textual endurance, Quentin dies yet his syntax survives, continued by Jason's later commentary. Death fails to seal meaning, Faulkner's strongest affirmation of unfinalizability. Jason's energy provides grotesque counterpoint. His mechanical bookkeeping voice is monologue raised to caricature, yet even he is not without dialogue. His conflicts with the town, with Mother Caroline, with niece and sister, reveal language as battlefield. Through him, Faulkner exposes capitalism's verbal ideology, the reduction of speech to transaction. But the text's irony undermines him, his perfect punctuation cannot save him from absurdity. When he curses the carnival that delays his business, he despises precisely the laughter that could release him. The reader perceives the tragedy of monologic modernity, competence without meaning. Diley's perspective brings ritual closure. Her church service on Easter morning composes the novel's moral polyphony, the preacher's sermon re-accenting Quentin's despair, Benjy's moan mingling with hymns outside. Word becomes body, sound becomes sense. In Bakhtinian terms, carnival here transforms into resurrection, not by transcendence, but by coexistence. Low voices carry high truth. The dialect spoken from the pulpit has rhythm of ancient laughter within faith. The reader, passing through this gospel heteroglossia, perceives renewal of dialogue itself. Faulkner's depiction of the South breaks geography into chronotopes of decay. The town of Jefferson stands between ancient order and modern commerce. Each Compson generation reenacts this fracture. Time loops upon itself like Benjy's memory, creating a geography of lost causes echoing beneath new slang. The plantation house, like Dostoevsky's monastery or Kafka's court, becomes architecture of monologic grandeur crumbling before polyphonic reality. In the yard, servants' chatter collides with propriety's silence, gossip merges with liturgy, every wall is semi-permeable to sound. The world breathes contradiction. In this acoustic landscape, meaning arises relationally. The reader learns that to understand the Compsons one must listen crosswise. Benjy's scream answered by Quentin's reflection. Jason's insult corrected by Diley's prayer. These correspondences create compositional counterpoint instead of plot. Faulkner's so-called difficult form is therefore ethical, demanding dialogic attention. Each misreading within the story, every character's failure to hear the other, mirrors the reader's own struggle for empathy. Reading becomes participation in time's carnival, not observation from above. The carnivalesque dimension, often overlooked due to the novel's gloom, pulses beneath its despair. Weddings, funerals, and Easter coincide, death and fertility entwine, propriety collapses into laughter's echo. Even Benjy's disastrous outing in the final scene, his screams misinterpreted, his driver reversing the carriage's direction, constitutes carnival of inversion, the idiot guiding the world, order restored by chance. The laughter such events provoke borders on tears, precisely Faulkner's tone and Bakhtin's laughter through the grave. Language in the sound and the fury becomes corporeal. Words feel the stress of accent, dialect, and tempo, syntax bends under emotion's pressure. Every paragraph exhibits social stratification of speech, biblical cadence beside profanity, childish babble beside bureaucratic clarity. This multiplicity corresponds to Bakhtin's vision of heteroglossia as the social dimension of verbal art. No unity of style can govern Faulkner's page. His challenge to pure literary language equals Dostoevsky's challenge to pure ethics, both substitute communion for perfection. The result is a novel that abolishes the possibility of closure. Even its final line, Benjy senses aligning as the carriage moves smoothly southward, offers equilibrium that trembles at the edge of collapse. Silence does not resolve, but contain. In Bakhtinian vocabulary, the work remains unfinalized, its author listening for responses across generations of readers. We continue that dialogue each time comprehension recomposes chronology, giving voice anew to those mute intervals where time stutters. Faulkner rescues the South, not through nostalgia, but through dialogic resurrection. His ruinous aristocrats, his faithful servants, his lost children, contribute phonemes to a single national utterance, America speaking to itself about guilt and time. The novel becomes a chronotope of remembrance and decay, history viewed through the prism of conscience. Where modernism elsewhere sought impersonality, Faulkner multiplies persons until impersonality collapses from within. His art, like Bakhtin's philosophy, insists that meaning arises only between voices, that silence too must answer. To call the sound and the fury tragic is to miss its deeper celebration, the persistence of speech even in madness, of rhythm even in rupture. Benjy's groan joined with hymns. Quentin's logic with water's murmur. Jason's rage with market noise. Diley's prayer with dawn's tolling, these together compose humanity's endless polyphony. In this polyphony, every wound of time becomes a note. Thus, in Faulkner's shattered chronotope, we witness the ultimate Bakhtinian revelation, that disorder of sequence is not chaos but dialogue of eternities. The fury of sound, is human speech refusing to end.